Hello teacups, what's brewing? Welcome back to the channel. We had a not unexpected video from Foodie saying that she's struggling with BED, which is a conversation she has had many times before on the channel. So during this video, she showed us her medical notes from visits to the doctor with her struggling with BED before this, because that's her justification right now for not following through on the diet. And actually, I really shouldn't have used the word justification there, even though it was. I want to preface this video with, I do not have a problem with the idea that she might struggle with her eating because she has disordered eating. Yeah, that's not an idea that I mock, and it's not an idea that I don't understand. Yeah. However, what she is absolving herself of, and what she always absolves herself of, is the follow through on that. And so she's having a conversation right now in this latest video of, no, she needs help. And this diet was never going to work because she needs help first. And that is not a new conversation to this channel. We've been through this entire arc before. But I know a lot of people found her during like lockdown and stuff. So it's actually a conversation, while it has popped up again and again on channel, there was a big push with it in the 2019 timeframe, and that's when her doctor's notes are from. Now, we are going to get into that because I feel we need a closer look at her timeline here, because she was showing notes out of order and her timeline is very convoluted anyway, and she purposefully makes it so to protect herself from criticism and also protect Sala from knowing the full extent of her problems, which is something we're going to discuss in just a minute. So that's what this video is going to attempt to do with what remains of her channel. But let's talk about her video first and some of the things she spoke on. So the point she made about the diet meal is that she started really motivated, she was very happy about it, and then very quickly realized that she was hungry, that it wasn't going to satisfy her. She said it was 1,200 calories and now suddenly it's 1,100 calories, I think because 1,100 sounds less reasonable than 1,200. It wasn't satisfying her. She ended up eating both of the meals, the lunch and the dinner, at the lunchtime, and by the time it came to her recording this intro, she only had the salad left, because of course the salad is the thing she didn't eat. Now, you can definitely have false starts to diets, because she's been through this before, yeah, and she's exhausted herself with this before. And I've always said that this is the struggle that I understand the most on Foodie's channel, because it's the closest to what I've been through in the past, and continue to go through now, because food issues don't just disappear. But Foodie likes to erase her past, and I think it's really important to focus on it, because you never learn from your mistakes otherwise. Now, in terms of the realization she had about the food and about the fact that it wasn't satisfying to her, there are a number of reasonable things she could have done other than just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. The first thing she could have done was to say to the people providing this, because remember, there is a nutritionist, dietitian, those two terms are different. One is backed up by education, one is not a legally protected term, so I'm not sure which one she has. But she could have talked to them and she could have said, hey, I'm finding these portion sizes difficult to manage. Is there any way we could look at food that's maybe less calorie dense but more filling? Could we increase the bulk of these meals because they're cooking them fresh? If that's impossible because there's a set menu that they're doing for all their clients, she herself could have bulked them up, because if it's 1,100 or 1,200 calories, she could be working at 2,000, 2,500 and still be in a deficit. So if we gave her up to 2,000 calories, which would be much more realistic, she could have done a lot more with the extra calories she had. She could add to those meals. She could do a ton of broccoli, cauliflower, side vegetables to bulk that up very healthily, not adding too many calories, but making the meal more satisfying. Now, the point of her ordering this is that she wanted to avoid having to cook for herself, which I understand, but she's got an air fryer there. She could throw some broccoli or some cauliflower into that and it would be fine. because I'm not surprised that those meals didn't satisfy her. The portions did look pretty small, especially compared to what she's used to consuming. And I think she did underestimate the panic it would cause her. And I think that's part of what she was talking about with the BED. I have, when I am on an eating plan, which I started a new one last week. This channel is not about my weight or my weight loss journey, but I went back onto low carb last week. And it's funny the things you forget doing, because I remember this happening right after surgery, where I'd not necessarily panic, but I get more anxious. Like if I plan out my food and it fits my calories, and that's fine, at the end of the evening when I eat that last meal, even if I'm not hungry, I worry, not that I'm hungry, but that I might get hungry and then I might not be able to eat because I'm done with my calories for the day. And that meant that I had to start looking at how I was balancing my calories through the day and trying to be a bit heavier at night to make sure I'd stay satisfied overnight. And this is a conversation that Foodie could have with her nutritionist, or she could look at the meals she's got and say, okay, I'm going to eat this one last, no matter what it's labeled, because I think it's going to satisfy me the most. Again, lots of things she could do. She could have a lean protein and a veggie extra meal that she prepared herself and eat both the meals for lunch and still be within a decent calorie range. But she hasn't done any of that. But the point is, I understand the thought, but I don't understand the action. Unrelated to the cycle, but I did notice as well that she said, oh, Salah paid for this for me for a month. And I'm sure she'd hold that up as, look how supportive he is. But actually, she's incapable of paying for it herself because she doesn't have a bank account. She doesn't have a bank account because she doesn't have the status to open one. But that also means that she can't really follow up with a doctor, which is why I guess she's looking for online options. Because if you've got an emergency, if you're sick, you can access a clinic. But if you want long-term care, you're going to need, or medium to long-term, that she claims she's going to be in Kuwait for, she's going to need to register with a GP so she can look at this and she can adjust her medications and she can talk to a doctor and get a therapist and all of these things. And she can't do that because she doesn't have the status to do it. I know she's still lying about it. I know she won't tell us about it. But that's my belief, and I believe that what we've seen so far backs it up. So yeah, Salah paid for it because she didn't have the option. She also makes the point in this video that she needs to sit down and talk to Salah because he doesn't understand binge eating. Because she wants to have an excuse ready to go when he's like, look, we paid for this, why not just try to stick to it? Or, okay, let's use this and do that. You know? And so she needs to be able to explain to him, no, this can't be helped. I'm helpless against this. I need different support. I need doctors. Even though, as we're going to look at, she accessed doctors before and nothing changed. And the reason he doesn't know is because she went on a swath of deleting through the depths of her channel. She claimed because she wasn't wearing a hijab in her videos, but actually she doesn't care whether she's wearing a hijab in videos or not from her time prior to being a Muslim. She cares that those videos represented her poorly in terms of her TMI stories, a couple of which still survive on channel, in terms of her binge eating and what Salah might think of her. Because remember, when she first got to Salah, she was putting on a whole front of being a different person, and she scrubbed her channel in response to that. So she's probably right. He probably has no idea the depths of the issues she has with food because she hasn't left any evidence that he would be able to see that would have forewarned him of that. And she did that on purpose. Now, today I do want to look at the 2019 timeline. So she showed some of her medical records because apparently medical records, not private, marriage certificate, private. Things are only not private on this channel if they're useful. But she had a big push towards attempting to deal with the BED during 2019, which is when her doctor's notes are from. So she's using doctor's notes from 4 years ago to justify her behavior now in an entirely different situation. Now, to understand her run up to receiving these notes and going on these appointments, you need to understand what was going on around that time. Now, for me, this was peak viewership time because this was when I was watching Chantal as an audience member, because I was interested in her story, in her struggles with weight, because they mirrored mine a lot, and I wasn't reacting yet. I started reacting in early 2020, mid, I think it was May, it might have been March, when lockdown started. Now, when you go into Foodie's timeline, there is not a lot left. And I actually, because this is what I needed, because I got very confused, I did a couple of things. The first thing I did was go and put the doctor's notes in chronological order, because she presented them out of order, and I think purposefully so it would confuse people a little. And then next, I went to check what was left on her channel. And man, there wasn't a lot. Just to help me out, I got her thumbnails and I dated them just from what was left. I have also looked at a couple of things that are no longer on her channel that I'll discuss in a minute. So right back on March 14th, we have health updates and Lexapro. That's when the 2019 arc really started. She had started pretty strongly that January with New Year, New Me. She had been trying to diet. I think she did the water fast in January of that year, but she was doing like what I ate today's and I want to exercise and all of that stuff. Now in March, she was having trouble because it had sort of fallen off in early February and she couldn't get herself back together. She was binging and she ended up going to the doctor. If the videos still exist, I will link them down below. If they don't, I'll just recap what I can or I'll link what I have. So she saw the GP. The GP told her she was pre-diabetic, that her bad fats were high, her cholesterol was high but not enough for meds at this point, and he put her on Lexapro for her mood. He also referred her to psychiatry and outpatients for the eating disorder clinic, which was where the note she showed us came from. So that was March 14th. Because she was going to have to wait a little bit to be seen, she asked the doctor, look, is there anything I can do? And he just said, Whole Foods. You know, I think the idea was just get her off fast food if you can. Don't worry about anything else. Just try and focus on one simple thing, Whole Foods, and then everything else you can do with the relevant doctor. But it was just a way to get her started. So of course, that came onto her own plan, which I'd forgotten she did a stint with low carb, although looking at the pictures of the meals, it doesn't look particularly low carb. But she, March 20th, has a surviving video, the My 400 Pound Life series, What I Ate Today to Lose Weight, Low Carb. So she took, hey, just focus on Whole Foods, and dragged it over to, I'm going to restrict myself on this diet. Now, I'm not speaking out against low carb. I'm doing low carb myself, and I don't think it'd be a bad diet for her, but I don't think she'll stick to it. And it is quite hard to stick to. Then you can see March 23rd and March 24th, she's still on the low carb haul. But also on March 24th, she has a buffalo wings and ranch sauce mukbang. And then also on March 24th, she has her No Longer a Weight Loss channel. So she's still ping-ponging, she's still cycling quite fast. She was struggling with her relationship with the audience, which I know is not shocking, but this was the first time we really saw her starting to lose her persona with the audience and getting more annoyed with people's feedback. And then March 26th, we have her weigh-in, Amazon haul, and exercise vlog, because apparently she's back on weight loss, and a Chinese food car mukbang. So all of that is happening within like 8, 10, 12 days of this conversation about her wanting a referral to the binge eating disorder clinic. Now, why is this important? It's important because the behavior then, 4 years ago, and there's evidence of her binge eating and recognizing her binge eating even before that on her channel. But the behavior then is the same as the behavior now, and it's going through the same motions and nothing is changing. She's not doing anything else, and the things she's describing probably won't work because she went through them here, and it was her behavior that was the problem, not the help she was being offered. So on March 31st, there was a video called Out of Control, and it's deleted on the channel. And the only reason I have any idea of it, and I'll link this below, was I did a react a little while ago. I think this was in 2020 I did the react, and maybe early 2020, but I'm not entirely sure of the date. And I was talking about context, and I was talking about how I still have sympathy for the struggle with food, even with what she was going through, because I felt that underneath all the horribleness that Chantal puts online, there is a tiny little voice that is hurt and scared and out of control and desperately wants help. And she's so unsympathetic, and so much water has gone under that bridge, that she doesn't understand why so many people aren't sucked in by this anymore. It's because she's already done this. But I will link my react to that timestamped when this video starts. It was her in a car, and she was binging really badly, and she admitted to binging. I think she said she'd eaten like 4 slices of a medium pizza, which she'd then thrown away, and then she'd gone and got wings, and she'd eaten that and the sides and everything. And then she had come home and she had boiled up a load of crab legs and eaten those. So she'd really just had a binge. And she says in March 31st, she's like, I'm trying to get myself back on the doctor's plan. Had to pause because I had my receipts mixed up then. So she's trying to get back on the doctor's plan during this deleted out of control video. And I'm guessing she pushed the appointment back a little bit, because according to her consultation note, she saw him on June 25th. But she says in this video, she's meant to see him in a week's time. Now, this was an ongoing thing with Foodie. She used to mess around appointments. This is where the infamous, oh, I got the date mixed up, comes in. And I mentioned that the other day when she was saying, oh, my diet starts on this day. I felt that she was making excuses, and then it turns out she failed the diet in one day. So maybe she was saying it because she tried it and already failed and didn't know how to get out of that. I don't know. But Foodie was actually deleting a ton of videos at the time, not because of the Muslim thing. She was, because she was talking a lot about a BED, and at the time YouTube was cracking down a little on the idea of harmful behavior showcased online, and people were beginning to report her videos. This was when the tide started turning for dangerous content, because she had BED and she was presenting these videos of her eating and things like that. So this was the first significant sweep of her channel we had. Now on April 6th, she had a video up called Doctor's Appointment Update, where this wasn't with the weight loss clinic. She had gone back to her regular doctor, and they had filled in the referral together for the clinic, because I guess the doctor was responsible and wanted to know exactly what her symptoms were to be able to get her the best help. And she came out of it, she's in her car, and she's frustrated because it seems like the questions were tailored to people who are underweight, because they wanted to know things like blood levels, potassium levels, and she felt that that information would be more important if she were low in those levels. And I'm sure that's a factor, but it seems like her interactions with the doctor, based on the note she gave us, the doctor was more than willing to work with her binge eating and her comorbidities. She said she put down that binging is a problem, and the doctor wanted to know a typical binge, and it had been really hard to go through, and she felt embarrassed and ashamed when she was having to describe how much she ate. And he asked her if she purged, and she said no, but sometimes I eat so much that it makes me sick, but I don't purposefully purge. So that's April 6th, and she hasn't seen the clinic, the weight loss clinic yet, or gone into treatment yet, but she's just filling out the referrals. Bear in mind, as she does this, the plan, such as it is, hey, try and focus on whole foods. And she is still doing fast food mukbangs at this point. So move on to April 10th, not very much later, we have the infamous medical medium video, because entitled Why the Doctor's Plan Is Not For Me. She hasn't seen the weight loss clinic yet. She just filled in a referral, which she, in her unprofessional opinion, doesn't believe is taking her seriously, even though it went through some quite vulnerable moments of, hey, okay, we understand you binge. Can you tell us what a binge looks like for you? And other relevant questions. And so she's written that off for the sake of a book that she reads the first few pages of, about a man who has a spirit guide that tells him what people need to be healthy. because she feels, because she is obviously more educated than any of the doctors, that because she called up the doctor's office and was like, hey, what would be a good snack? And they said, you know, you can grab a turkey pepperette and maybe a wedge of, I think they just, you know, the Laughing Cow cheese or something like that, Baby Bell, something like that. So that she'd get a little bit of protein and feel more satiated. Oh, I hate that word. I'm going to try not to use that word again. And she freaked out, not because it's actually that unhealthy, although her version of this was, oh, it's a carcinogenic, it can cause cancers, because suddenly she is research Chantal. I was about to call her research Lynn. And she knows better, not because of that, but because suddenly the diet seems hard. And so she goes running around looking for something else that she can justify as being better. And her justification is, well, I want to eat lots of fruits and veggies, so I'm not going to listen to this professional that I have now accessed. I doubt her doctor would have had a problem with her eating more vegetables. Because remember, although they seem to be recommending kind of foods that were a little lower carb because they just happen to be more filling, if she's saying she's feeling hungry, they're not going to say no to vegetables. He said whole foods. So this goes back and forth with her channel. She is still doing mukbangs. She has deleted a ton of stuff. I seem to remember in May, because there's a video here, May 7th, which goes, I'm back, well, sort of. She went through a period where she was going to be quitting YouTube to focus on herself and was like, I'm not coming back, I'm coming back, I'm not coming back, I'm coming back. This is the genesis of that. I know it's infamous with her now, but this is the genesis of it. So that's happening through the beginning of May, and a lot of the videos now are deleted. But yeah, she's still eating on camera, she's still doing what she wants to do, she's still like quitting YouTube and then coming back and not sure what she's doing. And that was the lead up to the medical notes we see that she showed us. So I have put these into order. June 25th, we're talking the initial consultation with the BED clinic. Now, the notes say she used to be on Seraplex and had put herself back on it 2 months before at 10 milligrams a day. It says she denied thoughts to unalive herself, and whatever else she denied is cut off. But the notes say that major depression is still active and it's not responding to 10 milligrams a day. I have actually done this medication when I was on medication. It was under a different name because I believe Seraplex is the brand name for it. But when I went on it, my doctor put me on it for 2 weeks at a lower dose. He put me on put me on 10 milligrams a day as a tester to make sure that it wasn't going to result in me feeling okay. So antidepressants all have a risk. Let's go back to that. Antidepressants all have a risk of making you want to unalive yourself. Not in the sense of, oh my God, it's going to make you do something when you don't even want to do it, but because if you have those thoughts, but you're so depressed you can't face the idea of actually doing it, being on an antidepressant can make you feel more capable. But if you're in a really bad headspace and you're having those thoughts anyway, one of the things you may feel more capable of doing is therefore following through with that action. And so there is a danger in that. And they put me on a very low dose and they kept me monitored, and they were like, hey, this is a helpline. If you ever have any thoughts of that nature, even if it's just to think, oh, well, that's not something I would do, please call these people or call us. But 2 weeks after, I went and they were like, okay, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And they put it up because they were like, look, we were testing you out for side effects, but 10 milligrams a day is barely a therapeutic dose. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that she wasn't responding to that level. Now, everyone is different in terms of what they respond to, but body weight does have an impact on how medication works on you. And I was a lot smaller than Chantal when I was on that medication, and if it was barely therapeutic for me, she wasn't going to feel the difference with that. But there is a certain boost you get with accessing help, because like it's really hard to take that step, but once you've taken it, you're like, well, thank God at least somebody knows now. So she may have had some of that. Sorry, not really relevant, but it is relevant, but it just triggered that thought in me when I saw her dosage. So the plan at this point in the initial consultation is to stop eating in trigger areas. Yes, they prefer she was off fast food because that is obviously a trigger for her. Try cooking at home, but try to stop eating in your bedroom and in your car because you have identified those as places where you hide food. And we'd like to just give you a moment to step out of that behavior, even if it means you're not reducing what you eat. They also gave her a medication, Effexor, and told her to take it, which she had previously decided didn't work and so hadn't filled the script. He says hasn't filled the script. I think she said she tried it and it didn't work. I'm not sure what the honest fact is for that. And then we'll see you for a follow-up. We have one note of evidence of a follow-up, and there's no other evidence because she didn't do any other follow-ups. You cannot cure something that has been with you for over 20 years in 2 visits. And this is with the doctor, not the therapist. Now, her videos from this point have been wiped. They probably exist on an archive channel somewhere, but she continued to do mukbangs. She continued to do car mukbangs really soon after, despite being told, hey, could you just eat at home even? So she is not following through with the doctor's instructions, and she's also not great over this period or any period we've seen on YouTube at taking her medication consistently. So all of the steps that have been laid out to try and assist her in taking the next step towards progress, she is either not doing or ignoring outright or not doing consistently. She's not following those instructions the way they were laid out. So she has a follow-up on July 23rd, and that was, weirdly, the first note she showed us. And in that note, it says her binge eating disorder is well controlled. No, it wasn't. And we can see that in her surviving videos in May. She was still binging around this time, and she was still doing mukbangs around these times, which, although she would go to the grave saying are not the same thing, are similar enough to be impactful to this statement. She claims her binges are down from daily to 3 times a month. I don't think that's true based on what I remember of the timeline, but the timeline does get convoluted. This does not seem an honest representation of what was going on. This was when she decided the Effexor didn't work well for her, but it says in the notes that she didn't fill the prescription. So he gave it to her and then she didn't take it. But they're increasing the Vyvanse she's on to 20 milligrams. I find the fact that he gave her Vyvanse to be a little bit interesting because back in March, she kind of had Vyvanse as her ace in the hole. She was trying to diet and she was struggling. She didn't want to go back on Vyvanse because it didn't affect her anxiety well. And she was speaking very much of, oh, well, I suppose I can always go back on Vyvanse. I suppose I can always go back on Vyvanse. And that was her backup plan. And then she went back to her doctor, and doctor was like, no, it impacts your anxiety terribly. So I don't think it's a good thing for you. And I remember her coming back and being really disappointed by that. But then a few months later, she's bypassed her doctor and is now asking her weight loss doctor for it. And he's prescribing it. So on September 10th, which is the first note we have from her GP, so after she went to the clinic, she didn't follow up after that point. So she doesn't have any more notes from that clinic. At least I don't believe she did. I may be misremembering, but I think when she couldn't stick to what he was saying, she just stopped going, which is usually what happens. But of course, these things cycle, and then she started caring again because her eating was starting to have an impact on her life, and she was struggling again. And September 10th, it says she was taken off Vyvanse after she complains about the effects that her doctor said, yes, you shouldn't be on Vyvanse for. And I think actually at that point she had taken herself off of it, because I remember there being a conversation of, hey, please go to the doctor before you take yourself on or off any medication because it's dangerous. And I don't know why she didn't go back to the weight loss surgeon at this point, because he would have been the specialist to talk to about binge eating, and she had that referral, but I'm guessing it had been so long she was just too embarrassed to go back and didn't want to have the conversation of, hey, why haven't you been following the instructions? So she's gone back to her GP in September, saying she's desperate for help and wanting to discuss binge eating and using that as a reason now why she needs help with her binge eating, when she actually already had a referral in place and could have gone to the clinic and just couldn't face the doctor because she was embarrassed. What could the GP have done for her then? They changed up her medication. They'd already referred her. She already had access to a specialist that she wasn't using because she wasn't being consistent with what they said. So rather than go back to the doctor that actually prescribed her the Vyvanse, she goes to her doctor who didn't want her on it to begin with and is put back on Seraplex and put on Wellbutrin. In November, she has a follow-up with that doctor about depression and binge eating. The doctor takes her off Seraplex and gives her something else. Prescribes her Vyvanse and Effexor again, which is what the weight loss doctor prescribed her, because apparently she's not sharing that, and I don't know if their notes are necessarily joined at this point. I think she got them all off the same portal, but I don't exactly remember what the conversation was in her videos at that point, and they're gone. So it may be she was just like, no, I want to try this medication again because I didn't follow through with it the first time, so it might do me some good. But apparently nothing massively changes, because in December, like, we have basically no videos between there. I think we have 2 videos, one of which is a haul. And I think she was still doing mukbangs at this point, because mukbangs were her bread and butter then, and because there was a huge conversation about her justifying doing mukbangs. And the conversation that went into 2019, 2020 was, actually, I don't have binge eating, I have a food addiction, and you don't really know what a binge is for me, so I can eat on camera and it's not a problem. But in December, Sharing Some Thoughts is a video that's still up on her channel, saying that she's supposed to have a follow-up in January. And then all the videos from December to January are pretty much gone. Except for the unboxing, until we get to the New York Sonic mukbang from February 14th, because she spent Valentine's with her one true love, which was fast food. In terms of the notes she gave us, we then fast forward to the 24th of February 2021, where she had a blood sugar test and says it goes down. Doesn't mention the fact that she was on cocaine to lose weight quickly at that point. And this is 2 years later. So none of it is really relevant to now, and none of it can be related to the other, but she just wants to use it to prove a point because some people don't believe her blood sugar went down. Weirdly then, she does a self-assessment for BED that she says, well, can be sent to your doctor as kind of proof she has it. Like, the weight loss doctor already said that she presented with binge eating disorder. I wasn't doubting that. It's obvious that she binge eats, and she's admitted to it, and we've seen it on channel. I don't understand the point of that self-assessment. The issue here isn't that people don't believe you binge eat. The issue is how you have completely disregarded all of the many chances at treatment you have had, and that is why the treatment won't work now, because you're willing to say you struggle with the binge eating, but you're not willing to struggle with the being uncomfortable getting treatment. And no doctor in the world can do the treatment for you. They can only offer you the opportunity, and regardless of your mental struggles, it is up to you to follow them. Now, you can ask for help in terms of, hey, could we look at depression medication, which she is self-prescribed at this moment, but hey, could we look, this is what I'm on and this is the dosage, could we look at that? If she had a doctor she could access, which would help her with like the depression sides of things, which would help her feel better tackling the other stuff, but it can't be done for you. Foodie has had multiple opportunities. She's had more than I would expect in terms of chances to access help. And those places are not unlimited. She took somebody else's opportunity to be referred there because there's only so many patients doctors can see. And yet in the 4 or 5 years since this whole conversation started on her channel, and since she accessed that treatment, nothing has happened and nothing has improved, and she hasn't followed through with any of it. And she has this epiphany like every 6 months. Usually you have the drive to be a better you on New Year, and then for some reason around this time every year, this kind of food is killing me, and my guys, I have these problems and I need to access help. And this realization and epiphany of how bad her situation is happens around June, July every year. She did it again. The fast food funeral, the first thing I reacted to. Oh, was it that late? Maybe not quite that late. But it was in the summer of the following year. because I guess the summer is when she starts feeling the worst about herself, because it starts getting hot, she starts to struggle moving around more, she can't find cute summer clothes, all these things start to percolate in her head. And people are wearing less in the summer, so it's harder to hide behind clothes. So now her plan is to try and find some kind of support group online, again, because she can't access doctors for ongoing treatment with her status. She would be a terrible group member. I'm sorry, but I don't see her respecting either the privacy or just the opinion of anybody in that group. I feel like she would make the group worse. And I think any one-to-one treatment that she could access, like an online visit with a therapist, which would be a completely valid option, I think she'd mess them around. She'd rearrange appointments. We'd get a lot of, oh, I forgot it's actually on this day. I got this mixed up. I forgot about it. Oh, I've rearranged it. She didn't answer. I had some kind of internet problem. And she just wouldn't go, because she's always looking for a solution that forces her to get better. And the only solution is to choose to and do the work. Okay, so that's my thoughts on that. I don't see this changing. I don't know if maybe today, later, we will see a video where she wakes up, she's getting the food for a month anyway, so maybe she will have a moment of realization that she could add something healthy to the food and still make it useful. But she doesn't seem to be in the mind frame to follow through with this at all, so I don't see it being helpful. But as ever, we shall see. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. I hope that wasn't too confusing and my thought process in that made sense, and I will see you next time.